it's Andrew Eborn here again with another Lives on Lockdown. Mind your language, it's Paul Gordon.
Mind your language?
We know what like that.
Matron.
Written to me, even some have coloured in the pictures and said, that boy's got a mouth on him, hasn't he? Up the apples and pears, down the beer of gin. You know what I mean? All that sort of stuff. Beer a lin, pint of gin.
Pint of gin, beer a lin.
Rubber dub. Talk about the... And I thought that there, Paul Gordon, he knows his etymology, doesn't he, from his elbow? So we should have a little chat with him about language. Mind the language with PG tips.
Language, Timothy, language.
I know, we love that. Tell me about, because you on your social media here, I've created this monster, I blame me. You're there on your social media. You get these wonderful little snippets of glorious stuff. You get card tricks which are actually in focus. That's amazing. And when I never get those. You deliberately pick a camera, which is like miles away. So the focus is, it could be anything. This ace is turned into an elephant. I love it.
That was the idea. I thought if I do something in the back of the room here, you'll be amazed.
I was amazed. That's amazing.
Look at this.
Oh,
can you see that?
Is that somebody in the... Oh, what's that?
Let me go. Is that two fate? Hang on, there you are.
No, that's good.
Can you see that?
No, what is it? It's like a Dali picture, but I'm sure it's not.
No, it looks like the Elephant Man. But if I do that, it's now a little puppy dog by the fire.
Oh.
And that's my business card.
Oh, is it? Are you a little puppy dog by the fire or the Elephant Man?
Both.
You are both.
I'm both. Isn't that a good idea for a business card that makes people look at it and wonder and keep it?
I think that's amazing. Well, they obviously didn't keep that one because you still got it.
That's for you.
Oh, is it? That's what I need.
Look.
Oh, look at that encyclopedia. 5,000 puzzles. 5,000
puzzles. This is Sam Lloyd. This is 1915. And do you want to hear the best bit from it?
Oh, yes, please.
This is really, I never knew you could do this. This is true. It's interesting. And I tried it and it works. Between 6 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the evening, if you've got an old-fashioned watch with a second hand and all that, if you're lost in the middle of nowhere and you point the small hand towards the sun, the distance between the small hand and the big hand, the exact halfway point between the small hand and the big hand is exactly due south.
So run that past me again. So I've got my watch on. I'm pointing it at the sun.
You point the little hand at the sun.
Yeah.
And the exact halfway point between the little hand and the big hand is due south.
So you're talking about 3 o'clock?
Well, depends what time it is.
No, it's 6 o'clock. You just said it's 6 o'clock. I can follow this bit.
No. Andrew,
it's 6 o'clock.
Wake up. Look, let me start again quickly.
Go on then.
If whatever time of day it is, and you don't know what time of where due south is.
Oh, I see. I thought I had to wait till 6 o'clock. So forget waiting. I'm going to fudge it. Okay.
Between 6 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening.
Oh, I see what you're saying now. Okay, yeah.
And you're lost in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
And you don't know where south is.
Yes.
You point the little hand towards the sun.
Yeah.
And then the distance, the halfway point between the little hand and the big hand, wherever that may be, will be due south.
Oh, I've got it. Okay, no, I get it now. Okay, so that makes sense. So if it doesn't work with this digital clock, does it? Obviously, that's no good at all.
Obviously not. If you had a digital clock, you'd know where due south was.
I suppose you're right. Being in central London is not that difficult to work out anyway. But when we go hiking in the deserts and the forests, and when we're allowed to do that, that is such a good tip. Another PG tip. Have you ever done it? Just burbling all this stuff, assuming it's true?
Well, I was stuck on the camel in the Gobi Desert once.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there thinking, I wonder where south is. And I looked at my watch, and it was only 5,000 miles that way. So I thought, if I get a lick on, I'll be there.
I love it. So you have used it. So you're not just because a lot of these people, they come on this show with all their tips. They've never tried any of them. And so what we then do live on air, we test it. So what's the time now? Have you got your watch on?
I don't wear a watch.
This is just a tissue of lies. I was hoping that Lives on Lockdown would be an escape from the media spin, the lies, the damned lies and statistics, and you come on here with your rubbishy theories about, and you don't even have a watch.
I don't even
That's
have
like
a watch.
a lie upon a lie.
So I would be, if I was in the middle of nowhere, I'd be stuffed.
No, if you're in the middle of nowhere, you'll be on the way to Durham, because that's not south at all either. We know what you're like.
All I would do is I'd do this, and I'd follow where the wind was blowing, and I'd go whatever way it sent me.
I'll tell you where the wind is blowing. It's not up there. So you talking about that, what I love about these sort of things, Paul, is it's always a joy to have you on the program, apart from card tricks that we can't see and glorious bits of advice and stuff. One of the things that I find fascinating is the story and the history behind things. And particularly, we were talking about the story and the history behind language.
Yes, the story and history behind language. Well, fire away.
Well, no, we're far away, far away. Do you know where that came from?
No.
Make it up. They won't know. Imagine it's like military. It's a military order. You're in. I can imagine these things, because in any situation, you can come up with a credible explanation. So I reckon far away would be a military term. You're waiting for the order from your captain Tom Moore, who's now a Sir Tom Moore. Remember what happened last time to Sir Thomas More? Be careful. You're waiting for the order, and he suddenly says, "Boom," and far away, and that would be it.
But it probably goes further back. It probably goes back to the days of Drake and Plymouth and.
Oh no, well, he was on his Armada, and you know what happens? He was gonna try and go all the way up to the North Pole, but what happened? He looked at his watch, and it sent him the wrong way, because he thought he misunderstood the sort of instructions, and he went south. And he wrote a little puzzly book, because he wore a watch those days. That's the one he wrote. That's one. Look at page 427. The word is Drake.
Yeah, Drake's error.
Drake's error. That's what he says. He said, "Duck off." So all of that stuff. So I love words. I love the stories of that sort of stuff. So firing away is exactly what I'd like to do. I also like the bits about Cockney rhyming slang. Your apples and pears, your Vera Lynn, you can't believe your mince pies.
Your Aris.
Your Aris Tweed. See, I can do this. Talk us through some of your favourites, and I bet you've got a trick to go with it that we won't be able to see, but you can talk us through it. This could be.
I don't know about a trick, but you can't see my tricks, and I can't get the camera down.
It doesn't matter, it's radio. We can describe tricks. I was thinking, actually, the other thing I want to take up in this day and age where we all wear masks outside, I want to take up ventriloquism, because I would be brilliant. Nobody will see it at all. And I could be the Archie Andrews of the TV world. And I could just stand there and whatnot.
Let's try this in. Name any card in the deck.
Anyone at all. The 4 of diamonds.
Correct. I mean, that is just genius.
That was amazing.
I had no idea you were going to say. Now look, language. Back in '79, I was just leaving school in '79, and my favourite program of all time kicked off on TV, and that is Minder.
I remember good old George Cole. Apart from George Cole, he was a star.
And he actually the main role for that was it was going to be a Dennis Waterman showpiece with George Cole's character, and it suddenly took off almost the other way. That George Cole, Arthur Daly, stole the show really. But I think
I Could Be So Good For You. That was the theme tune. I remember that. And Dennis could sing.
Could be so good for you. Love me like you want me to. I'd do anything for you. Classic.
It was a classic. There we go. That's the budget blown on paying for music copyright.
I mean, do you know what? Those Arthurisms, I think they're fantastic, and most of them they call it Mockney because it wasn't real Cockney. But the stuff he used to come out with. I mean, I still think when I watch them every now and then, I've got all of them on my tablet, so I can watch them whenever I want. And there's always a gem in every single one, or more than one.
No, I mean, you're absolutely. And what I love about it was the writing. And
Mm.
it's what we said beforehand. You can have the most expensive, the biggest budgets in the world, which they all waste on special effects and other bits and pieces. Cats is a prime example of that, where it a great budget, and it came up with a pup of a dog's dinner of a movie. And I think if you do it with the writing, what's great about those series, and it's the same with Only Fools and Horses, the brilliantly talented John Sullivan,
Yeah.
who wrote Only Fools and Horses, and line after line, the reason it works so well is because the writing is brilliant.
I think, you know, like sometimes I think the best gags are like in Fawlty Towers, where they are the side gags, the ones that kind of you generally miss, but they're there. And what I always remember in Minder is when he's on the phone and he's in the background. Arthur's on the phone in the background, and Terry's doing something on the desk in the lockup, and he's in the background. He says, "Oh, I'd love to talk right now, but you know what walls have got? No, not sausages."
Brilliant. It was a great line. There's a great line.
An innocuous little line hidden in the back there. But whoever wrote that, it's just a lovely piece of business.
It was very good. And if you look at the timing, actually, there was a video by somebody called Andrew Eborn called The Art of Magic. It is Art of Magic. And I was wondering, because I do use that line in there. And I don't think I nicked it. I don't think I nicked it because I asked all these kids. It was the first ever. You can still find it out there somewhere. It was the first ever commercially released video VHS of magic tricks, commercially released. Because rather than doing boxer tricks and things like that, what they said, I used to represent a company called Ireland. And Ireland had people like U2 signed to them, they had Cat Stevens, and Ireland, like these big companies that happen, it got sold to Polygram. Now, Ireland had a video arm, and they used to do music videos off the side of it. But the people behind that wanted to carry on making videos. And they said, okay, you can do videos as long as they're not music videos. So what happened? They said, they knew me as a magician. Not many people do, but they knew me as a magician. And they said, have you got any ideas? I said, well, why don't we do what would have been the equivalent of a box of tricks and bits of plastic, but we'll do a video version of it with stuff that people can make at home. And so we did The Art of Magic with Andrew Eborn. And the other release at the same time was Jeremy Beadle. Do you remember him? Jeremy Beadle's box of tricks as well. And he basically came up with all his practical jokes and things like that. But in that video, that VHS video, I used a classic line, what do walls have? Sausages. And that's the one. So I didn't know, maybe it all happened around the same sort of time. But it is interesting, isn't it? And the other thing you made with that story of yours, you said he was on the phone. He wasn't on the phone. He was on the dog and bone.
He was on the blower.
The blower. Why is it called the blower?
Because in the old days, you used to go, as you well know. As you well know.
I love etymology. I love working out how words evolve and so on and so forth. What do the French call déjà vu? All that sort of stuff we love. And we love, because most language, if you look back, and this is why people say about the Romans and the Greeks, and what did they ever give us? They gave us the most fabulous words, discombobulated. You can work out the different elements. And whenever I say to people that they're looking at the dictionary, if you know the different bits and pieces, you know that you can probably work out. So poly, meaning many, I was discussing this as a thing. So poly whatever means there's going to be many of something. So polyamorous, you mean lots of love things. Polygon, disappeared parrot. All of that sort of stuff you can work out. So if you understand Latin and Roman stuff and Greek and all the sort of history there, it works really, really well.
Well, I think I told you, I did Latin at school when I was in boarding school. And all I can remember from Latin is amo amasamat, blah, blah, blum.
You missed the other bit. Amo amasamat, amamas amatis amant.
Ah, you see?
You only went to half the lessons, didn't you? That's because you went to the wrong way. You were looking at your watch going south. That's the problem.
That's because
I was a bit longer.
I was sat there reading the Odyssey and the Iliad, and but actually I didn't. This is true. We used to have on the desk the Iliad, which we were supposed to be reading and so on. But underneath the desk, I had the Jabberwocky, which I was trying to rehearse because I had to do school. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but it's a funny little thing. But at school, the headmaster said, all the boys, there's only 45 of us boarders, next week you're all going to read out these rhymes. Oh, I did mention it. And they all read out Keats and Wordsworth, and I did
Bit
Jabberwocky.
pretentious. And Jabberwocky is a brilliant word. And what, you were 7 at the time or something, which I think is
I was
fantastic.
7 years old. 'Twas brillig and the slidey toe did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the borogroves and the mome rass outrave, etc., etc.
Oh, did you do the etc. bit?
Oh, I can't remember the
Ah,
rest.
you see, you're too busy reading half this stuff. No, it's a brilliant, brilliant poem. But you came up, you had a few, you had some other ones, some slightly naughty ones, if I remember.
Naughty ones, yes, yes. We don't want me to repeat them, do you?
Well, nobody's going to watch the last one. They couldn't even see the card trick in that.
That's true, yes. Well, the one I remember mostly is a sigh but gust of wind coming from the heart takes a sudden downward course and is often called a fart. Farting is a pleasure. It gives the bowels ease. It warms and scents the bedclothes and suffocates the fleas. But a fart is a peculiar thing. It starts at the base of the bum. It travels down the trouser leg and comes out in a musical hum.
Glorious. And you could tell, I could see the little Paul Gordon and the teachers going, boy.
You know why I got away with it?
How do you get away?
Because I was kind of a bit cute and a bit twinkly-eyed about it.
I'll tell you what, if you do most things, because I was cute and twinkly-eyed, can you believe? But if you do most things with a wry smile, I think you can get away with murder, can't you?
You can indeed. That's why at school I managed to get away with all sorts of things, because I was always answering back. But this is I mentioned this not on your show, but I mentioned this somewhere else.
Did you go elsewhere? You're tired. Where did you go? You mentioned it
Michael
elsewhere.
Parkinson,
Well, thank you for calling,
Hartley.
Paul Gordon. We've got our next caller on line 47.
I'm talking about the big shows, the Russell Hartys and the Michael Parkinsons.
Russell Harty.
Dan Leno and, well, there's no Jay Leno, not Dan Leno.
I know you're on the Dan Leno show because you went the wrong way with your watch. we love that. The watch you don't even have. You know, this is just a tissue of lies today, isn't it? Lies, damn lies and statistics. Never let a good story, I thank you, Encyclopedia. Never let a good story get in the way of the truth. I know.
That is true. As Kenneth Williams once said, Kenneth Williams, you know what? I met Kenneth Williams, as man as a bloody March hare, but he was like every talk show host's saviour, because he just was so erudite, a bit like yourself.
Yeah.
And the stories he used to come out with always made me smile, always made me laugh. That's why I think if you can find somebody on a talk show that's got something to chat about, even if it is absolute bloody nonsense,
yeah,
it's probably a little bit more exciting than the guy who sits there like this.
Oh no! And this is what I love about making it real. I had the great Toya Wilcox, great friend of mine, with me yesterday, and we were talking all about her sort of career and everything. A lot of which I know. And she's worked with Laurence Olivier, and she's worked with Katharine Hepburn, and she's worked with Sting, and you know she did Quadrophenia and Jubilee, and she's a brilliant, brilliant artist. But the great thing is she's real. And we were talking about how the people who are most comfortable in themselves, the biggest A-list stars who stay up there, you know, they stay up there or down here, or looking the wrong way with your watch, but they stay up there. And what happens is they feel so comfortable, they don't need to put on this show all of the time. And they can say, look, today's not a good day. This is what happens. And they can make it really real. That's what I like about it, is that it is real. It's talking to people, and I get irritated, I guess, now. People will come on the show, and it's quite a popular show now. I've got lots of people all lined up, and a lot of them will start off by doing the here's a trick, here's my book, here's the watch I don't have, and they'll start off with all of that, and then you gradually peel away the layers of the onion. And you get to the real, looking beneath the kimono, you get to the real person. And that's the interesting bit, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And I think we said that on the first show. You know, I think there's a time and a place for things, because I've been to some parties where it's all so much peeling of onions. Quite frankly, it's bloody dull, because, you know, I think peeling of onions to a certain extent, but then I do like a good laugh, you know, and I like it when somebody tells a good story. I love it when I belly laugh. When I absolutely, and I'm one of these people that I just can't help it. I've done it at a magic circle, probably inappropriately, but if there's something happens on stage, either funny or inadvertently funny, I just can't help but laugh. And I I think I must be a rare breed that can actually do that, because some people, they're always nudging you, saying, shh, shh, shh,
No, no, no.
shh.
I'm the worst at that, Paul, because I will, and it's there's something about human nature because we're both very mischievous, which is what I love, and that
Yeah.
when something you know this is not the moment to laugh, there's something in you. It's like whether it's at a funeral or the most inappropriate, somebody's making a really tragic speech or whatever, they mess up, and you bite your tongue, don't you? Because it bleeds, and I'm just there, just like, wah! You know, it's amazing.
Well, I could tell you a funeral funny. I was at a funeral. I was a teenager, and I've been to a lot of funerals, mostly in the last 5, 10 years. But this particular one, it was where you stand round the grave, and obviously the family were, well, I was family. I am family, so crying their eyes out. But something happened that made everybody laugh, and it happened in phases. It happened as in horror, followed by annoyance, followed by the truth is that it was funny and everybody laughed, and including the widow. And what it was is they're all standing around the grave. Somebody during the crying took out a handkerchief to dab his eyes. A coin leapt out the pocket. It landed on the coffin and did one of those brrrr, and this brrrr on the coffin seemed to go on forever and ever and ever. And you know when he gets to the final stage going, and when it finally stopped, people were angry, then they were annoyed, and then somebody started, and that was it. You got 30 people around this grave crying their eyes out with laughter. And I can say that because it was family, and it's funny.
It is. You should have shouted out heads or something. It would have been
Incorrigible, incorrigible.
yeah, well, encourage me then. But this is what I love about language. Language is so powerful, and the best jokes are built on playing with those words and things like that. And the whole sort of Cockney rhyming slang where people are working on that sort of basis where you toy around with things. Language is beautiful, isn't it?
Well, can I tell you something I love about language? And this goes to Fawlty Towers. I like watching documentaries about writers and what they do and what they don't do. And there's two little funnies here. The first is that they were talking about the Major in Fawlty Towers, and the best lines they wrote, John Cleese and
Connie Booth.
Connie Booth. And they were talking
I'm going
about,
for the car now. You can test me on anything. Go for it.
yeah, you're very good at this. And they were talking about the best lines. And one of the lines they wrote for the Major, after they wrote it, they had a little addition. And I think this is so clever. And the line they wrote was, whether somebody dies, and because the Major relates everything to war and the Second World War, or whatever it may be, or the First World War, somebody died. And so Basil says, oh, somebody died last night. And the Major says, shot, was he? Now, that's funny. But after they wrote it, they come up with another little bit, which is even funnier. So, oh, somebody died last night. Shot, was he? Then Basil says, no, he died in his sleep, Major. And then the Major says, ah, that's when you're off your guard. Now, isn't that wonderful?
It is.
And you're adding a little sprinkling to the end of the gag.
But it's also, is what they said, the secret of comedy, it's all about that timing. It's all about that rhythm. And when we look at, and I talk to a lot of comics around the world. I used to be chair of the Montreux International Comedy Festival. I did that for a couple of years, and it's a great honor. And what we tried to do, we got all the different comedians from around the world and put them together. And there was I've got international people from Just for Laughs. I mean, the heavyweights of comedy all came to this glorious place in Switzerland, and they would compete. And when we looked at the themes and the things that affect people and everything, they're all the same. It's all about human foibles. It's all about let's have jokes inside. It's all about bodily functions. It's all about the quirks of human nature. And there's just a little bit which is cultural, depending on the relevant side. But it's a fascinating thing. So I had a guy a couple of days ago, so a comic from Cairo, which is absolutely brilliant, a guy called Hashim, who I've known for several years. And he was on, and he has the darkest humor. And I think that's where humour comes from. It gives us permission to release what is a tension inside. Because you're either going to laugh or you're going to cry.
Oh, God. Isn't that the truth? I mean, that is why probably I laugh so much, because the alternative is a bit grim. Which is why I always say this jokingly, but I say to people when they're a little bit serious, or they say about me, you're a little bit too irreverent. I said, well, we're all going to die. That's for sure. And people of my age are going to die, you know, the next, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years. If we're lucky, we could die tomorrow. But so we haven't got long on this planet. So you either have a choice to take everything so seriously and be kind of anal about it, or you might as well have a laugh about it. I mean, there's two choices there, aren't there?
Yeah, I think well, I know you're absolutely right, because you know that's my view of life. I think you've got to be irreverent. I think you have to be real, because actually if you keep playing with that sort of stuff, you get completely screwed up inside. And the reason so many comics have mental health issues is because they have to have this persona all the time. And actually, I keep saying it's okay not to be okay. And I think if you can look at that basis, laugh about that, but realize there's some days when you feel terrible. And some days when you just want to laugh to get it out, and other days you can make sure that we can stop people being artificial. I hate the fake. What I hate about a lot of these chat shows and things like that. People are there and it's manufactured. You've got your 3-minute segment where you've got to promote your book, or you've got to sell your record or your latest TV series or your film, and they're not real.
I think that's why I liked the Parkinson show, especially the early 70s, where it was nothing about promotion. He got people on because he wanted to talk to them, and they'd obviously been told that he was a good listener. And Michael Parkinson, in my opinion, in the early days, he was asking questions that we all wanted to ask, but there was no sales pitch in it. And he got some people to really open up. And do you remember years before that, the Gilbert Harding interview on the face-to-face interviews? And he started crying, didn't he? Because he was talking about his mother, and Gilbert Harding was supposedly a hard-nosed, hard man, but this interview brought out some stuff. But it's those kind of interviews. The ones I never liked as a boy were the Russell Harty, flippant kind of innuendo-y type interviews.
Spanish suppository.
Yeah.
Talking of language.
Spanish suppository.
Innuendo. Isn't that what they call it?
What's that old joke about the guy who's walking down the road with a suppository behind his ear, and somebody says, "Why have you got a suppository behind your ear?" And he says, "Because some bum's got my ballpoint." There's a joke for everything. There's a joke.
Of course there is. Of course. No, but you're right. And it was that fluffy stuff where Parkinson would get to the real stuff. And it is interesting. It is interesting. Is that, I mean, you kindly said that about me. You say, no, sort of, this is what we do about the Michael Parkinson type thing. What I love about it, it's a genuine interest. Firstly, I'm really, really interested in people. I'm really genuinely interested in their story, but I'm interested in them being real.
Yeah.
What I found is a lot of people, it's rather like permission to open up. So I've had people on here, big names and smaller names and people important, everyday heroes, as I call them. And they will come on here and they'll talk. They'll talk to me like a proper conversation, but we'll laugh and we'll cry.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is people will turn around and say, actually, I feel comfortable talking about this because others have done so. And so what I found with this series, I've done a lot on adoption, for example. We had James Fortune opening up. All of a sudden I got contacted by, and he was in tears, I mean, floods of tears, and the tragic situation, what happened there. Andy Clockwise, and I didn't know his story, but in the magic world, people will know Andy Clockwise, children's entertainer, very bubbly, and all that sort of wonderful, glorious stuff. And the fact that he was adopted, and he was in tears as a result of James's story, and came on the show. And he also spoke for about 3 hours about his personal situation. And the great thing is that people then suddenly watch the program, and they suddenly say, actually, that's me, I can learn from this.
Well, but isn't that the joy? And that's why, you're very good at this, Andrew. You know, being serious for a moment, you are very good at this. You're very likable. You've got a nice manner about you, and I know you. That helps. Not always comfortable being interviewed by people I don't know, because you don't know what their motive may well be. But you come over in a very nice manner. And when people do talk about things, whatever the subject may be, whether it be funny or sad or all the emotions in between, it does help people, because it makes you realize that other people are in that situation, or other people have been there. And even this morning, I was just watching, because I'm a Sinatra file. I've got everything about Sinatra, and I'm in the business on the Sinatra side. I'm well known as one of the biggest collectors. And in this interview, somebody said to him, do you ever get nervous because you just seem like cocksure all the time? He said, but when I go out on stage, I'm always anxious, always nervous, always full of adrenaline. And the reason being is, do I look good? Is my suit sharp? How will the voice be? Etc., etc., etc. All the concerns that all of us performers have. He says, I go out on stage and within 20 seconds, that's it, I'm in it. And on we go. And the interviewer said, well, that's refreshing to know that even Frank Sinatra has anxieties about going on stage. He said, well, of course I do. He said, people who go on stage cocksure from the get-go probably aren't very good performers because they don't have any frailties to offer the audience as to why the audience would like them.
And you're right, and that's the classic moment. And if you dissect any act and you work out what bits have really worked, the reason that the acrobat fails 3 times is to get people on their side. The quadruple somersault where they had to do south but they missed their watch off, whatever that happens to be, works on that sort of principle because you're getting the audience on your side. You want them to win. The person who, and this is what I don't like about some magicians who are so cocksure that they do these glorious manipulations, and some are beautiful, and they're absolutely beautiful. But there are some of that who sort of do that and just watch me, and there's another card, and here's another card, and here's another card, and here's a dove, and all that sort of stuff. And you hope that they'll make a mistake because that's what you want. You want that little element, and you want them to fail. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not, you're not carrying them with you.
Well, it's not like, I mean, as you say, the people that do that are incredibly talented. It takes a heck of a lot of work and more power to their elbow. But if you don't
Nothing
have
on their elbow,
bumping elbow, but if you don't have a likability part of your routine or a frailty to it, and again, I talk about this in my magic lectures when I do. There's an ace cutting routine I do, and there's a bit in it where I kind of aren't very sure whether it'll work out, and there's a bead of sweat and I'm a bit anxious, and it's all acting really, but it's because I want the audience to feel like the tightrope walker, oh, is he going to go? As we know in the days before safety nets, tightrope walkers would walk up and down in rehearsal without any problem at all, and they only add that bit so that you think they might fall.
Of course.
The audience really want to see somebody fall and crack the head open.
Well, it's the old gladiator thing. That's why people used to love the gladiators, because you want to do your thumbs down and that's the person being destroyed in the end. Because you have to have, it's the same with any television program, you have to have a bit of jeopardy. Will they, won't they? Because otherwise everything's so predictable, isn't it?
And it is these days. I think, I think about TV a lot. And when it was live and when it was frail back in, let's say, in my lifetime, in the 60s and 70s and probably early 80s, things would often go wrong or things weren't beautifully rehearsed. And not that you want to see things go wrong all the time, but when things aren't always perfect, and then, like talent shows, let's put it to talent shows. When you and I were young, there was Opportunity Knocks and
Huey Green, fantastic, yeah.
And New Faces.
New Faces, Nina Mishka, who's a great friend, lovely sense of humour.
Yeah, and I was
wonderful Marty, yes.
The guy in the old days before Derek Hobson.
Yes.
Remember Derek Hobson? No, Hobson's Choice. Oh, goodness me. Good film with what's his name? Charles Lawton.
There you go.
Anyway, so in those programs, everything was a little bit raw, and I like that. But now everything is so polished and shiny, and the judges are polished and shiny. The acts are polished and shiny and over-rehearsed and over-produced and blah, 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 blah. It's not that attractive.
Well, the thing, but it's a different sort of a show. That the show is about human behaviour. It's about human history. It's about human feelings. So you want, and people do the satire thing, and you find some brilliant sort of comedy satire on that sort of basis, where it's all about the tragedy. You have to have personal grief, which then makes you likeable. So they are brilliant. It's mainly a vehicle for the judges. They're great. That's what they've got. And you're watching human stories because human stories are fascinating.
They are fascinating, but I still, for me, just a personal thing, I still, when I look back on memories of watching Opportunity Knocks and New Faces, there just seemed there's something a little bit. The world was a simpler place. TV was simpler, and you know, with things like have I got news for you? That was the week that was. I used to watch that as a very small boy, and it literally looked like they were making it up as they went along.
Yeah.
Actually, they probably were.
I know,
And
but you're right. And just on that point, I mean, even bringing it back to stuff which I'm talking about now is that so many people, and it's lovely. I love it. I encourage people to write to me to want to come on the show because I just love meeting people. Some of the people who do that will say, can we chat beforehand? And can we just do this? Can we run through what you're going to ask me? And can we, and I say to everybody, look, I'll do all my own research because it's all in there. That's what I like to do. If we chat through it beforehand, I'd like to go on that journey of experience with all the knowledge that I've got. So I'll find out whatever I can about you, but I'm not going to ask set questions because I don't know where it's going to go. And I'd rather have a real conversation because otherwise I'll be here with a clipboard and I'll say, right, Mr. Gordon, tell the story about your watch that you don't have. You know, and I'll turn around and you think, and I'll be like, thank you. That'd be brilliant. Oh, I'll tell you what was really good, which I saw today, talking about viral videos. They did that fantastic one with magicians. Have you seen it? So it's on social media when they do that. It reminded me when they took a pack of cards, I think they called it the card drop or something. Right. And the magicians do this and it then drops into another magician. They do a quick trick or they change into their stage wear. They do that again and then somebody else does it. Brilliant viral video. I'll put the link on here. But really, really clever stuff. But that's my point. If people are over-rehearsed, you can tell it's not natural. And they do, and a lot of guests will start off and they'll do their spiel. You know, they come on. It's what I said to you beforehand. Most people are lousy at acting. So it's rather like the magician who they're supposed to convince people they've made a mistake. And nobody in that audience believe they made a mistake. They thought, you know, you can't find my card. First, I don't really care when you find my card, but you can't find it. Where's the jeopardy? Oh, it's just, they can't act.
Well, acting is such a, I mean, I don't know whether I'm a good or bad actor, but I work very hard.
You're a bactor. I reckon you're a bactor. It's one of those camels with 4 humps.
But you know, I do work on it because I think there's so few people, I can't think of many who act out their card magic, but I do. I act it. I try and. I mean, my character is basically me anyway, but it's a larger version of it. But if you are, for instance, if you are going to cut the pack of cards and find the 4 aces, and you're telling the audience it's a difficult thing to do, there's no point in you making it look ridiculously easy. So you've got to act it out, but not overact. So if you, like in the movie Maverick, the remake with Mel Gibson, there's a bit in it where Mel Gibson cuts the pack. Now, if your kind of life depended on cutting to an ace, or if you cut to an ace, you'd win the jackpot, you'd kind of be, you know, you'd be trembling a little bit and you'd be thinking about it, and a bead of sweat would come down your forehead, etc., etc. But if you overact it, or as you say, bad act it, it's embarrassing, isn't it?
Well, it is embarrassing, and also, again, it's a personal preference. There's some people, they practice. It's these manipulations, and they look beautiful in other bits and pieces. But you then tell people how difficult it is to cut to the aces. Well, if you can do all of that wonderful stuff and it flies all over the place, cutting to the aces is toddle, isn't it? So I'm not really one to have flourishes when you're showing off how difficult it is to cut things. What are your views?
Well, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I think people who do cardistry and flourishes, they are incredibly talented. As I say, more power to their elbow. They work very hard on it. But for me, magic is something that is kind of a hidden mystery. Magical things happen. So whereas cardistry and flourishes are more akin juggling, which is an open display of skill. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's hard to mix the two successfully, because in magic, magical things are supposed to happen and you're not supposed to see the cogs and wheels turning. Whereas in juggling, you do see the cogs and wheels turning. So for me, I'm a Di Vernon school of kind of the naturalist or natural way of things just kind of magically happen, you know.
No, I think you're right, and it works on that sort of premise. And I think people should really stop and think. I mean, one of the great things they do at the Magic Circle is introduce concepts where you're not just learning other tricks, but things like how to make your magic more magical. Because I do believe it's the bits you need to. We all have enough tricks. We all have enough tricks. We can learn a different trick in other bits and pieces, other than those in the books behind you. You still got to learn those. Thank you. So I still haven't got my copy. Every day I run to the post. So that Paul Gordon, the amount of plugs I've given him. You know, one day I'm gonna book
You wouldn't be able to do it. This is skillful stuff, Andrew. This isn't your racket.
my racket. I've got the talking racket. That's easier. Absolutely. No, but I can show them a book. I can say, I can pretend like you know the trick about the watch that you don't have. Oh, here we go. Look, what's over there.
Right, the book as well.
Oh, look at that! Isn't that nice? Talk. I tell you what. This is what I want you to do. You now. That's you've done. Look, we've done the thing. I want you to sell. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all other people as well. This is going to be a 30-second pitch from Paul Gordon as to sell a book. Okay, you can do both of them. I'm going to just introduce you, and you're on now. Here's your close-up.
I'll sell books without even taking them off the shelf. They are gorgeous-looking books for starters. But the main thing is, all the magic within my books is magic that I have been doing for donkey's years in pubs, clubs, restaurants, bars and grills for real people in real situations, sometimes standing, so you don't need a table, sometimes with a table. There's no big setups. There's no big fancy moves. There's no hard moves. This is kind of commercial, workable magic that most people can do. And that is the truth. That's a simple. And if you don't believe me, go to my website, watch the videos. You can see me doing it in real situations. So that hopefully is the living proof. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, you can go and watch Andrew perform.
Hey, there you go. Fantastic. So do that. We'll put the links because we're kind of like that, you know. I also know that in this day and age, it's all about encouraging people, encouraging commerce, because I think the more that people can buy books rather than just another prop, the more they're going to learn. And what I also like is spend as much time on the theory and thinking about things and thinking about your own narrative. Don't just regurgitate other people's narrative, because I think that makes a lot of sense. Right, finally then, I want to have your top list. Oh, go on, go for your thing.
Oh, I was going to say, talking of your own narrative, in my books, I give a guideline for pattern presentation, just a guideline. But I don't put my pattern presentation in it because I say, my books, I describe the nuts and bolts very clearly. Because I'm dyslexic, I try and describe them ultra clearly in 1 or 2 pages, so you've got to wade through 30 pages. I write in a conversational manner, but basically I'm saying, here is the nuts and bolts and the idea of the routine, but put your own stamp on it by coming up with your own presentation pattern.
No, absolutely. And this is why today's mug, Go Away, I'm Reading, with that sort of stuff, it's good, you know, because I think the principle is that go and learn. We said before, learn not just from magicians, but learn comedians, learn jugglers, learn what the great writers and the rhythm that you get with it. Because then you'll be in the situation. And if you're real and you're not rehearsing, but rehearse, but you're not sounding as though you're rehearsing, that's the way to do it. It's like the real experts. It's like Les Dawson. We always say, you know, he did that. How long did he play to play the piano so badly? He could only play it so badly because he could play it so well.
Yeah,
and I think that's why it worked.
You know, one of the best books I read a few years back on script writing and a script writer, which is a both sad and funny book, is the Eddie Braben book. I'm sure you've read it, the Eddie Braben autobiography in reference to Morecambe and Wise. In fact, it was interesting. One of the interesting parts in there is where Eric and Ernie were being interviewed by Michael Parkinson, and Michael Parkinson was saying how wonderful the scripts and the shows are. And Eric kind of alluded to the fact that they'd written them. And a few days later, Eddie Braben sent Eric Morecambe a book of blank pages, and with a post-it note on the front, and the blank pages, it said Eric Ernie, Eric Ernie, Eric Ernie, Eric Ernie, without any script, with a post-it note saying, if it's that easy, you try it.
And that's a glorious note on. And actually, I would encourage people to try it, because when you try it, you'll then realize the skill involved. And actually, the more in these extraordinary times, the more people do things. And I'm watching people with their way they're presenting tricks with, and people are listening. I'm not, because what happens is people are learning. And I previously said people didn't have a place to be bad. You know, that's what's
Yeah.
happening in Variety and so on and so forth. I think we now have got a place to be bad, as long as people are forgiving and everything else. But what I would totally say to people is just let yourself go free rein a bit, because you'll find the bits, you'll find your own rhythm, but learn some of the techniques along the way as well, because that will help you get better.
Yeah, you do have to. You really. I mean, when I was younger, I was awful, and I didn't want to carry on. It
What do
was
you mean when you were younger?
you can
So
go off. You can go off people, you know.
I knew you were on, but yes, okay.
But I was 13 years old, and my dad said, I won't repeat the whole story because I've said it before, but my dad said, go to the local pub, do some magic, and I was awful, and I didn't know how to engage, I didn't know how to perform, blah blah blah. I went home to give up. My dad said, no, go back down again. So I went back down, and eventually I got the hang of it. So I was really bad, and but I got better, and I think that's the thing. If you can't find your way really by just sitting at home and hoping it'll happen. So write a few lines, cobble some tricks together from your favorite creators, whatever they may be, coins, ropes, stage, blah blah blah. Think what you're going to say, think about your character, how you're going to perform it, and make it credible. I'm sure you and I both remember when I was in a local magic club when I was a teenager. Every now and then another teenager would stand up to do an audition, and for some reason his parents thought it would be a good idea to put a 12-year-old in a dicky suit with a bow tie and a top hat. Well, certainly in the 70s, nobody used to wear that kind of outfit, certainly not 12-year-old boys. Right. So, you've got to find a way. That's why so many youngsters these days, they perform with all their tattoos and their hat back the front and blah, 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 because it suits their persona.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And the other thing that people need to do is surround yourself with people who say no. Because what happens is when you're asking for criticism, people are not really asking for criticism. What they're asking for is praise. So how did I do? And you want, oh, you were brilliant. That's fantastic. And actually that's no good to anybody at all. There's a time and a place. And actually they always say praise in public and criticize in private. That's absolutely right. But the only way people get better is surrounding yourself with people who say no. Actually, that wasn't very good. Here's how you can have a look at it and make it better. And I think the more when people say, do you really want to know how good I was or whatever it is, or what you really thought, if you're open for that and it's not a criticism, you will get better.
Obviously, you have to offer criticism or suggestions in a nice way. But I'm still shy of doing it because, I don't know, about 20 years ago, a magician said to me, may I ask your advice about my performing? And I said, look, we're friends. I'd rather not because we'll fall out or you won't like it or something will happen. And he said, no, I really would value your opinion. And I said, well, that's nice that you would value my opinion, but I still think it's a dangerous area to go. Anyway, he eventually persuaded me and he said, can you tell me, the good stuff and the bad stuff? So I mentioned the good stuff and the bad stuff. I said, the main thing is that there's two things. One is that when you do a move, you telegraph it by taking an intake of breath. You kind of go, and then you shuffle on the floor a lot. You make a lot of noise with your hard heels. It's all a bit tappety rackety. And he said, no, I don't. I said, well, you do. He said, I don't. He said, you're having a go at me. I said, oh, here we go. And I said, well, that was my point. You don't want me to, you don't really want to hear it. You just want to hear the good stuff. And to cut a long story short, I've not seen him since.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, surprise, surprise, on line 27.
Oh, Andrew, can I tell you a funny?
Go on then.
You like my funnies.
I do love your funnies. I'm looking forward to hearing one day.
Oh,
go on, go for your funny.
Oh, this is, I don't think I've told this before, but I was reminded of it. And it's a bit apropos what we just said. My brother's godfather, as I think I mentioned before, is Felix Bowness.
Yes, I remember. Heidi hi!
Heidi hi, hody ho. And Felix was a best friend of my father, and he used to come to our house, and the whole family were just very close. And Felix used to regale us with all these stories. And it was somewhere in the mid-'80s or early '80s. Felix was invited to, or was a guest on Eamon Andrews' This Is Your Life.
Right.
And he genuinely didn't know anything about it. And Eamon Andrews had approached my dad for some stories, and he asked my father, if he would go on the show. My dad declined it. He didn't want to be on it for whatever reason. So it was mostly celebrities on the show. But towards the end, Eamon Andrews said, Felix, do you recognise this voice? Do you recognise? And this guy went, hello, Felix, the year was 1942 and I was cleaning out the locker and you came up to me and we became firm friends. And then Eamon said, and Felix, do you remember this voice? Felix, it was 1961 and we were working in Butlins. And do you remember the act so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so? Anyway, and then Eamon Andrews said, and please welcome, and the curtain opened and these two guys came out and Felix went, oh my God, it's been years. It's been years. And it was hugging and kissing and this, that and the other. At the end of the show, Felix came up to my dad and said, I hadn't got a bloody clue who those two blokes were. He said, I have no recollection.
No, we love it, and that's the great thing about it. Sincerity, if you can fake that, you can fake anything. I love it.
I remember him saying, he said, I can't end this show by going, I don't know who you are.
Yes.
I don't remember you. And Felix said, I'm not really one for, doing all that in private, but I'm aware they can't recut this. They can't kind of edit the whole thing. So as soon as they came out, I was prepared for not knowing them, because I didn't recognize their voices. So sort of flinging his arms around them and hugging them and kissing them and
But nowadays, Paul, what the cute thing is, because we know that people do that, what I would like to do, and sort of is a human that appeals to me, is you do the double bluff. So you film it like a real show where the celebrity does all the, it's been so long, it's been so long. And then you do the real show with showing them they're being fake. Because that will then be, because that's more my sense of humor. You sort of turn around and say, aha, you don't know them at all, do you? It's like your 5,000 friends on Facebook. That's another game show format I want to do. I want to do a little test about, what do you know about Joe Blogs over in Bognor Regis? And we'll work on that, because it's such an artificial world, isn't it? And I think we can keep it real, and keeping it real is what this is all about. If you enjoyed today's show, we'll get Paul back for many, many more PG tips. But for now, Paul Gordon, mind your language. I love that. Thanks for plugging your books, and I'll see you next time.
Bye-bye, everybody, and bye, Andrew.
Bye-bye. So there you have it, Mr. Paul Gordon, shy and retiring, but some great points as always. If you'd like to take part in the show, write to me at lol, that's LOL, at octopustv.com. But for now, don't forget to subscribe, put your comments in the bottom, and I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot for joining me. Bye-bye.